in the South, diplomacy or divide. Welcome to Behind the News, the time where we need to understand the local struggles together with the global powers playing crucial role in shaping our lives. My name is Tinyiko Wininkuna. I'm with my co-host, Mr. Joe Mhlanga, aka KGB. Minjani kokwana?
Hi, Gog. We are living in very interesting times. We have been witnessing a lot of conflict around the world. Middle East is the hot spot. Yet there's been one that has been going for like 3 years now, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So it's a very interesting topic. There are some words that I once heard in a different platform where international channel RT asked me to contribute in my views when the African leaders were trying to go there with a peace plan, 10-point peace plan. I don't know who sanctioned the leaders of Africa to go to Europe and try and resolve European problems while we have our own problems in Africa. So maybe let's look at that insight before we unpack the comedian's visit to South Africa.
Now let's go back to our top story. While hosting an African peacekeeping delegation in St. Petersburg, Russian President says Kyiv broke its promises on a draft agreement ensuring Ukraine's neutrality, which could have led to conflict resolution. Let's go live now to Joe Malanga. He's a geopolitical analyst from South Africa. Joe, thanks so much for joining us here on RT. Now, Africa has been playing a greater geopolitical role. What are the chances, in your opinion, for this peace initiative proposed by South Africa's Ramaphosa to succeed?
I must start by indicating that in most cases, there's been a trend that all the parties that are meant to negotiate with Russia, they sometimes take the interest of Russia lightly. The initiative with the African leaders, they needed a very clear understanding on the historical effects on what makes Russia uncomfortable about anything that has got to do with Ukraine. You might want to take it back to Minsk agreement that the previous president of Ukraine said it was a waste of time. It was giving them an opportunity to regroup. They didn't take it seriously. You look at the grain deal from the Ukraine and the Western partners, they don't take it seriously. Now we have African leaders that I believe it's a good initiative that they are embarking on, but they needed the historical facts and the historical understanding in getting ahead in terms of getting what the Russian guarantees will be in any dealings that they want to get Russia involved into.
Fair enough, but I mean, why is Ukraine not even considering it?
Like the previous colleague said from Zambia, Ukraine is not independent. Ukraine it's a free-for-all country. They don't make decisions. They get told what to say. They get told what to do. And the people that are influencing Ukraine to take that direction, wherever they're going, whatever they're doing, it's not necessarily talking to what the reality should be in the eyes of Russia, in the eyes and at the best interest of global. Because we have a lot of things that are blamed on Russia, but nobody is taking that time to want to sit down and understand what is it that Russia wants. So any mission, any negotiation, any kind of talk, the president of Russia is well aware, he understands it very well, that whatever that people are bringing to the table, the history has taught him that nothing has been kept as a reality from Ukraine's point of view, since Ukraine is being controlled from Brussels, London, and Washington, D.C., or Pentagon, or wherever you want to call it, or landing the CIA headquarters, but it's not necessarily independent. So the people in Ukraine, including their president, they don't have a say in what should be happening in their backyard.
Right. You know, I was going to ask a little bit about President Putin, as he said that a neutrality agreement had been put into place and signed and initialed in the early days of this conflict. Do you think it was the West that told Zelensky, forget about that and you need to fight?
It's, for example, John Kirby in Pentagon said, we are not in favor of peace. We are not in favor of any ceasefire that should be happening in Ukraine. So that is a senior spokesperson for Pentagon. They don't want anything that has got to do with peace as far as Russia is concerned. So the West has, in fact, full scale of anything that has got to do with Ukraine. It's influenced by the West. So yes, I believe the president is right to suspect or know that the West has changed. For example, what is it that changed? In the beginning of the conflict, there were hopes that there could be peace. We saw both sides had negotiating teams that went and meet in Minsk. There were a lot of things. There was talks that they were going to be talking in Turkey. What happened to all those negotiations? They fell apart because the West was saying, this is what we've been waiting for. We've been pumping money. We've been pumping the military hardware to benefit the military industrial complex. So it's got nothing to do with Ukraine. Everything is got to do with what Washington, London, Brussels, whatever that they want to achieve. But it's not necessarily helping the actual citizens of Ukraine. That's the unfortunate part about this conflict.
Indeed, Joe. Let me ask you, when we look at the African continent, does it still have a neutral position, would you say, when it comes to the Ukraine conflict, or is it leaning to one or the other side?
It would be very unfortunate for me to think that Africa has a neutrality stance. There will never be neutrality. No, anybody who will say there's a neutrality does not exist. African countries were pushed into go to the Western direction through imperialism and colonization. Now they are being freed from that. They will have to lean further to the East because they are treated differently from the East as partners. Now, let me also indicate that why most of these countries want to take the stance of neutrality. They're scared of sanctions. They're scared because most of these countries, if they get sanctioned, the banking sector, insurance, oil, gas, education is still controlled from New York, London, and Brussels, and many other European countries. So they're not yet fully independent. So they are trying to play neutrality for that reason, for them not to be sanctioned. They should be taking a direction. How can you play neutrality on the very same people that have been oppressive towards your continent for the past 500-600 years? So they are doing that because they are doing a lot of calculations. You might have seen how, again, they get treated when they arrive in Europe. Look at this plane saga. Look at how they were treated at the Queen's funeral. They were put in the bus. European heads of states, they were put in their own cars. So they know exactly how they are being treated. They know exactly that the America has no friends. They have interests. The Western countries have no friends. They have interests. Their interest is to get the resources and create their puppets and do what they want, and they remove whatever that they want back to the West. They're enriching their economy through Africa. So
Indeed.
African leaders should not be playing neutrality cards or positions because it doesn't exist.
All right. Joe Malanga, pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today at RT. Good talking to you. Good insight.
Yep.
Yeah, I've underlined several aspects, but there's one that it's outstanding. Is that
Yeah.
Zelensky is turning Ukraine into tool of trade for the West to use his people as tools that are going to help them deal with Russia. And I wonder if he's able to see exactly what he's doing, because It's not the West that is suffering in here. It's him and his people. So let's come back to Zelensky coming to South Africa. Do you think he's coming here as a diplomat, or it's a tactic of ensuring that Russia be isolated? They want to get a buy-in from South Africa to be part and parcel of the West, so that we as South Africa, we move out of BRICS. What is your take from this?
Let me also give a background that Zelensky is a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. I have to be very clear. He's a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. He comes from the same region where the neo-Nazis have been bombing for the longest time, because the NATO wanted to create Donbass and Luhansk regions as buffer zones for them when they're preparing to break up Russia. This is the dream. This is the dream of the West, to ensure that Russia is no more, because this is one of the last standing countries that is resisting to their imperialistic ideologies that they need to spread around the world. So geopolitically, Russia is in a good position. We need to remember that after the defeat of Hitler, the Americans used their extension arm called NATO. NATO is a military wing of the military-industrial complex in the US that they want to use to bully the countries in Europe that don't want to cooperate. So they will force people to join NATO. If you don't want to cooperate, then they tell you NATO will protect you. We have seen these things in 1990, 91, when Yugoslavia, Bosnia were bombed by NATO, because the leaders did not want to bow to the Western puppet masters. So we need to understand that this is not just something that happened 3 years ago. This war on the people of Luhansk and Donbass region started in 2014, when they toppled the previous president, who was democratically elected in Ukraine in 2014. Victoria Nuland was the leading woman from the US that was sponsoring the rebels. She was coordinating that through the CIA funds to ensure that they also protect the biolabs, the experimental biolabs that are in Ukraine. They are not even in America, they are in Ukraine. So Zelensky was aware of this. Zelensky, when he was campaigning, he did say that as soon as he gets into the office, he is going to talk to Russia. Remember, Zelensky, when he was a dancer/comedian, he did dance for Putin. He did dance in Kremlin. He did dance in Russia, since he's a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. He was welcomed in Moscow until he became what the West wanted him to be. And I must also indicate that Zelensky is not struggling. He bought $8 million mansion in Tel Aviv for his parents. They bought a villa in Miami. Some cars are seen in Morocco. There's parties that are happening. There's money that has disappeared. Most of the arms that were sent by the West to Ukraine landed in the hands of Hamas in Palestine, using those arms against Israel. So there are military hardware that the West sent to Ukraine, and some generals in Ukraine sold it to the generals in Moscow, and a lot of people did not know that the generals in Ukraine sold the equipment to the Russian generals. You know, It's a reality that is there. They could not account for the money that has been sent to them. They said there's no money. Where is the money? Where are the weapons? Nobody knows. So this was seen to be more of your money laundering machine. Remember, Joe Biden and his son had operations happening in Ukraine. So Zelensky found himself caught up in the Western web, where they gave him so much that his soul is sold to them. He cannot find a way out of this conflict. So he had to bow to what these guys want him to do. So we have seen him going to, since there's two major families that are controlling the world, being the Rockefellers and the Rothschild families. Now, when the Rockefeller puppet came back to the office, we have seen the hostile treatment that was given to Ukraine, because the Rockefellers understood very well that the Rothschilds were using this guy to launder money, to take a lot of money out of the US, and they told him that there's no payback of that money. Then Trump said, surrender some of your mine, surrender some of the natural resources, or else pay back the money. Now you must ask yourself a question. In America, the foreign policy doesn't change. The parties and the president can change. Ask yourself, why now? Since when a different president will come and oppose the foreign policy of the other, and then say pay back the money, meanwhile the other guys, a week before he left, he signed $8 billion to Ukraine. You see exactly what is happening. When Zelensky visited Washington, he behaved like a schoolboy until there was a motion where he was thrown out of the White House. Where did he go to? Which first country that he went to when he left there? He went to London. Who?
Yes.
Why London? London is a Rothschild nest where all the people, we knew that even in South Africa, some, when you get elected as a president, and then immediately after you must go to London, you must go to Washington. We were expecting someone to be elected, go to Kiali or Ghana or somewhere, but people would go to London. So he arrived in London. That's when the Rothschilds reassured him through the European Union, through all the stooges that are there, to say you have to support this guy, or else, otherwise you guys, you're going to leave offices. Because if you don't do what they want, you're going to leave the office. You go. They don't play. So now, when he went to London, where else did he go? He visited some of this country. Now it leaves you with a question. South Africa. Which family is South Africa with? And why is South Africa comfortable hosting this guy who is the enemy of South African friend? Does the current administration understand the role that Russia has played for us to be here? So this now leaves you with a bitter taste in your mouth to say, why is the current administration accepting Zelensky? Cyril was one of the people that was put on the plane for almost a day and a half. His security was not allowed to leave the plane, and the journalists, they were stuck there. That's how they were treated. And then we asked the question, barintikinga la South Africa, there's a lot of things that are happening. And at that time we were still going through the load shedding, but aeroplane toilet and leave us in the dark here. So there's very certain that they were trying to go and bail out and say, oh no, we're trying to make sense. He did not listen to them. Now, why all of a sudden the comedian is coming here? At what mandate? He's a warlord. He's picking up small boys in the street, put them in the front line to the meat grinder, so they can be buried. Now the conscriptions that they do when they see a male walking, males are not allowed to leave Ukraine. in case you don't know. But he's allowed to leave. Leaving people die there. So now, but the biggest question is, why is South Africa comfortable hosting this guy? I mean, we had this lousy media statement or something that they said that no, they want Zelensky to express why they can't reach a peace. Who in South Africa if Zelensky can't listen to Trump? I mean, come on, let's be realistic. Our president, some people in this party can't even listen to him. Why would he think you will have a leg to speak in the global stage? So you can tell that our president was told to receive this guy. Zelensky was told go there. So both these guys are someone's voice who is instructing for them to come. But why South Africa, if you may ask? South Africa is seen as a big brother. We are there. We are one of the few countries where our colonizers never left. That's why we have these problems. Our colonizers never left us. That's why we have problems. So the colonizer is able to get involved and say, do this, do that. We're not going to really confront the issues, but we will be suspicious to say, why all of a sudden did Cyril make the call to say, hey, chief, this guy's coming here, so don't look at me in a bad way. I've got nothing to do with it, but it's coming here. Remember, Paul Mashatile said, if Putin says that in South Africa, because there's an international warrant, I'll arrest him. Now, is South Africa still part of BRICS? Or South Africa part of the swing state project that the West have come up with to target Brazil, India, and South Africa to swing them back to the West? I'll say yes and I'll say no. Again, Paul Mashatile said, South Africa is not yet ready to go on BRIC currency because we still rely on the dollar. When you rely on the dollar, you're still kissing the S of the West. That's basically what he was saying.
But Joe,
the visit of Zelensky confirms that South Africa is being swinged back to the West.
Yeah. But Joe, you have said a lot about Zelensky's integrity, which is not there. If he is able to buy a mansion in Tel Aviv for his parents, why his people that he is ruling or he's leading are dying, it demonstrates the lack of integrity. So for him coming to South Africa, it also questions us as South Africans. How do we accept a visit of such kind of a person? And it's somebody who is leading his people to the dead end. They don't know what to do anymore. And the very same person we are accepting while we are questioning whether our subscription to the BRICS is still there in South Africa, because us accepting Ukraine into our country, does that undermines the neutrality? Taking into consideration our relationship with Russia, it's very undermining Russia's relationship with South Africa's relationship with Russia, because if you say that our deputy president was able to say that I'm going to arrest Putin, after we are able to analyze the global aspect to say that this is not just about Russia and Ukraine, it's about Ukraine being used as a tool of trade for the West to benefit through NATO. You are able to tell that, but you still want to make sure that you terminate a country that has a history of supporting other countries that were in pain from the imposition that was coming from the West. This is really unfair. So I want to, if you were a Russian, Mama, let me ask, if you were a Russian, how would you feel about South Africa accepting the Ukrainian president, taking into consideration the relationship between Russia and South Africa?
If my enemy is comfortable with you, you are part of the problem. If I'm
I agree
Russian,
with you. I agree with you.
if I'm Russian, I would say, if my enemies are comfortable with you, you have a lot of explaining to do, and you are part of the problem. And also, you will take it back to say, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, came on behalf of President Putin to the BRICS in Johannesburg. And Medvedev made a statement to say, should anyone arrest Putin, we will bomb that country with immediate effect. So because Putin has friends in this country, and they understand that South Africa is a very good friend. He has friends here too. So he then decided, let me not go to South Africa because I will create problems. Because now my friendly country is already infiltrated by my enemies within the government, within the government cycle. And some people are comfortable saying that they will arrest Putin if he comes here. But let's look at this. Who are these people taking orders from? Because if you look at Zelensky, if you look at some of these guys in the government, they're taking orders from somebody. They say things that they don't believe in to please the master. And these are things that ordinary people need to start understanding, that any form of government has a master. A president has to take orders from somebody. There's certain things that are happening. If you talk on BRICS language, we should not even be entertaining. We should not even be looking into that direction. BRICS has put us in the box of sense of belonging and affiliation. Hence, I'm against neutrality. If I say I'm neutral, so I'm saying your enemy is right and you are right, or your enemy is wrong, you are also wrong. So I'm not taking a stand. How come Africans all the time has to be asked, are you with the West or you with?
Yeah.
Why can't we have our own sense of belonging? It's the same example that people are saying with these trade wars. Would you go the China route? Why do we have to go to anyone's route?
Not yours. Yeah.
This should be the opportunity for us to say, let's use this period to do an introspection. President Trump is doing what's good for his people. Xi Jinping is doing what is good for his people. Putin is doing good for Russians. Who is doing good for who? Torres in Burkina Faso is doing good for his people. In South Africa, who's doing good for who? They're doing good for their families. They're not doing good for ordinary people. So these are things that people need to start questioning. We must not go and say, oh, with this direction, with that direction. Where are we? Let's look at even the policies of this government. What is it that talks to us on the ground? What are the programs that are supposed to be playing in the same league as China and US? We don't have that, because our policies have to be approved by the West, where we are cornered to have a deputy president to be forced to say, oh no, we're still comfortable with the dollar. How come we can't say we're comfortable with the rand? How come we can't say that? So the very same government that somebody who had a strategic position, who colluded with outsiders to collapse our currency so that it can have a disadvantage when you trade outside, she still came back to work in the system. Meaning, our government people are not loyal to the South Africans, they are loyal to the masters. This is the problem that we have. Hence, you see, it's easier for Zelensky to come here. Somebody has done a proper study to understand how weak South Africa is at this current time.
When you talk about him visiting South Africa and you start linking it to the trade war, it's something that I was spending the whole week trying to research, and I'm still puzzled to understand exactly where are we as South Africans in this mayhem. We have the West wanting to sustain their power in terms of trade, because this is about their old way of defining what is development, and they want us to still subscribe to their definition of development, even if things are not working for us. China comes and then become leading in terms of economic development and trade, and Europe now starting being jealous. How would you contextualize the issue of Russia, Ukraine, and South Africa, and also in the context of BRICS? Why I'm asking this question is because based on my feeling is that BRICS, it's a way of taking the power that is coming from the West, because when you have BRICS, it becomes your tool to say that I will hold on to BRICS principles so that I don't follow the principles of the West, as the West principles has been derailing the whole world, starting from pre-colonialism, we come to colonialism, post-colonialism, we're still suffering the same wrath. So nothing is changing. America just wants to reinvent the power based on how it's going to benefit the West while we kiss their shoes. You heard Trump saying that, kiss my what? Or you jump. So it demonstrated that the West feel that we are in a confined environment where we need to listen to them. So please try to help us understand exactly the relationship between Ukrainian war against Russia or vis-a-vis, and then our relationship with BRICS, and how is it going to benefit South Africa to see the value of being in BRICS without compromising it, and stay away from Ukraine, because Ukraine obviously is a tool of trade for the West.
We need to look at the administration that is in charge of South Africa currently. Does it subscribe to BRICS? Does this administration has the willpower to look into the BRICS agenda? Or is this administration more of the G7 administration? Because now you have your G7, you have BRICS. These are the two major standing points that should be giving guidance either to the East or remain in the West. So I look at the East as the sunrise, and it's a sunset in the West. It's always been, for the past 600 years, we've always been in sunset. But remember, as long as you have leaders that are funded by corporations during their campaigns, whatever program in that country you have, it's going to be very difficult to implement things that will have sustainability and future for that country. For me, in my vocabulary, it's forbidden to mention South Africa with the word development. This is a developed country that sustained a lot of trillionaires who stole from this country and leave people poor. So we should be very clear in understanding why South Africa is in this position where it is at this current time, and how can it sustain itself in ensuring that all the programs that they have in BRICS are fulfilled and are implemented. So this Ukraine issue, Ukraine saga, should not be part of the problem if they know what is good for them, if they know, or if they have a system of sustaining anything that is planned through the BRICS table. They will respect that by saying, this is our friend. We cannot go to bed with the enemy of our friend, because that makes us look like enemies. That's the answer.
Yeah. If you were an advisor to the president or to the politicians who are making decisions for the country, what would you say about accepting the Ukrainian president against our position in BRICS. Just in a few words that are inspiring for us to see that even though we find ourselves in this situation, we still have an opportunity to do the right thing. What would be your advice?
Firstly, the question will be, if I'm advising him, would he listen? Or he will say he's shocked with what I'll be saying. That's number one. Would the South African president listen to the advice? Or maybe when I finish talking, he will say, oh no, Joe, I'm shocked. Because he's always shocked. So is the advice would be, don't think for yourself and your time and for your heart. Think of the business people. Think of the smaller guy. Think of our children. Think of and all the loans that we've been taking. Remember, part of BRICS, it was to say each of the countries in the BRICS bloc need to come up with a system where we'll be self-sufficient. We can sustain ourselves. So we'll help each other so we can cut off loans. So we can bring our own physical economy. We can have our own engineers that we can have our own technicians. No, not to have people when they reach a certain place, they go to Europe. When they reach, they go to America. So the stealing of the technology and the personnel has to stop. Let's look within us. It should be for us, by us. Because remember, during the apartheid days, South Africa was self-sufficient because there were sanctions. They made sure that they do things for themselves. But as soon as so-called freedom that we were sold to came, everything else disappeared. Where did they go to? So if the president is interested, if there's a political will for him to really love this country, to really understand some of the decisions that he's taking, he will be thinking for the people. But another question, if he has a master that tells him what to do, then you have a problem. So your advice won't say anything. He won't listen. When it happens later on to say, by the way, we are a suspect in BRICS, the other head of states in BRICS are talking behind your back, he will say, oh no, I'm shocked. I thought I was still a member of BRICS. I'm shocked. Oh no, to hear this, the president expresses shock. He's always been shocked. So I'm saying, if ever he can listen, if ever he can sit with advisors, but what if the same advisors he has are also part of the problem? That's why they could not advise otherwise to say, not now, don't have this guy now. These are the problems that are still happening. We don't want the spotlight. We still have to deal with the issue of taking Israel into the Hague. We still need to deal with this. Let's face here. Let's not create unnecessary pressure. Because now, to Trump, he's going to pump more pressure to us to say, oh, I kicked this guy out. You are accepting him. Oh, so you guys think you're clever. So these are some of the things that on the foreign policy of South Africa, it's now in the crossroads whereby you sign deals with others, but you still want to keep the others. We basically in Zulu they call it pick. So we that's what we are at this point in time. The other countries who are supporting Russia within the BRICS bloc, they're looking at us with an eye of saying, can we trust these guys? So whoever will come back and take over in the steering the ship in South Africa need to look at those things. The foreign policy of South Africa is very shaky at the moment. So the advisors, maybe they did advise to say, accept Zelensky. We'll tell the Russians, we want this guy to come here so that we can find out what is his problem. No, he went to the Americans, same people who are funding the war. Americans are now playing to they're trying to play as if now they're the mediators. No, they're not the mediators. They are the direct people who are fighting Russia. And if Zelensky can be rude to the same people who are giving him money and weapons, who are we in the midst of all of this? So now it makes you suspicious why this guy is actually here. There were some rumors in the social media to say he bought a mine in South Africa for this much. Americans are giving him money. He bought a mine in South Africa. We don't know whether it's true or not. But some people in some areas are saying this guy is here to do a business deal and go. Some are saying no, it's to put there. But there is more into this than what the media is telling us and what the government is telling us. So advising the South African president to listen, because it's to other people, not the voters.
Yes. So tell me, beside the issue of Zelensky visiting the country, what other facts demonstrate that the South Africans' position in BRICS is uncertain?
The other fact is that when Paul Mashatile said South Africa is not ready to use the BRICS currency, that was the biggest of them all, where even Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles could have read between the lines what was happening.
Yeah.
You know, well, I will use the context of South Africa, but Mlangeni and Steve Tekani would have been able to read on that day to say, these guys are taking a clear position to say, we're still going to go the Western route. The BRICS thing is wasting our time because we still rely on the dollar. He does not believe that South Africa can sustain itself through the BRICS channels. He said it. So those are the facts. For me, that was the end game, because India said the same thing.
Yeah.
So, as I said, the project swing state, it's at play, full swing. Full swing. There are countries that are within BRICS that need to be the puppets of the West to ensure that whatever that is being discussed from the BRICS bloc will be shared with the West. The West will always come with countermeasures. That's my belief.
Yeah. I think we have said a lot about what's going on in the world in terms of the trade war, using the visit of our brother from Ukraine to South Africa, South Africa in BRICS, demonstrating some uncertainties. However, how do you see the global trade war being a part and parcel of what's happening in the Middle East? Has to do with the definition of development that is coming from the Americans. Without you having subscribed to their definition, then you will be attacked directly or indirectly. You are in, you also suffer. It's Ukraine. It's in, but it's suffering, and we have the countries that are showing that we are not part and parcel of your behavior, and they're still being attacked. So please try to contextualize all these wars that are happening in the world into the issue of trade.
Every war has benefited the military-industrial complex. That's a fair trade that happens. And when they sell you this weapon, they can only sell you the weapons with the dollar. There's no other way they can sell the weapons with a different currency. So the military-industrial complex are the chief beneficiaries of the war. That's the first part.